eliminated. You eliminate yourself. So
it's not all tough like that. There's a humane face.
There's a humane face to it. You collapse and they carry you off. Then immediately they finish. Then they show you the washroom.
Oh no. We have our medics always on hand. Yes.
So this is the reason why before you join and accept the you'd see. But so if I am weak, does it mean that I don't have the fundamental human rights? We can all join.
Limit the casualty rate when it comes to training. So if you are weak, I don't think you will be able to meet the standard. And you should also know that the military, we also have our fundamental human right. That is, you should be fit to train with us. So you don't come in telling us our fundamental human rights says you should be fit to train with us. So we'll let you go through the medical screen procedures you go through before qualifying for training. Because we don't, we always want to maintain that high standard of professionalism.
Officers are telling you that yes, you have a right to join, but then before you come in, you must know that you have the capacity to stand the test. But it's a beautiful institution, and how I wish your smart turnout. I see your behavior, your comportment, your decent to have. And I am happy that you say that you don't want to compromise your standards. So these standards don't attempt to walk through them.
I would have wished that one day probably our country would accept that everyone doing national service to do it with the military. By so doing, I think when we're talking about discipline, our country would appreciate what discipline. You go to train, you do want to have. That is what would make you understand that if the president comes, ask if we are all disciplined, wearing laid down shouldn't be a problem.
And we get to where we are even discussing now. I heard the last time we were even discussing sit down, and they have structured the thing that if you do this, if you don't wear it and you are arrested, it is now what do you want to do? Do we want to take it now to 1 city to 10 cities and you remove this one? But I think that this is supposed to be in cities. Then you don't have to. You have to wear your mask. And then when you say fine or this, and you don't have the money for fine. And so it is not very careful. We are looking at thousands. And then they will turn around and say, do you have jails? Unless you go and build a stadium of prison. If it gets to where we have to build a stadium of prison, let's build it and put them in. So that they know that you can't benefit from doing the wrong thing. So you line all of them up and you put them in. If it's a tent, we put up a sleeping place. And that will start giving people, encouraging people. We are too soft and too considerate, and we are negotiating everything. And I don't think that one is what we would have to do. He didn't do things like that. He made sure that he was disciplined himself, and he was able to achieve this because he was disciplined. So if you want to achieve what he did achieve, the only ground rule is discipline. Minus discipline, forget about it. You can't do what he did. How do you do it? You'd see. Right. So I think the issue of considering one time that we will have a part of national service be a military program or force program. Either maybe because we used not to have national service. National service came to us, and we are respecting it. So if we now decide that okay, let's add this one to it, and the future is brighter if we are able.
And that we shouldn't give up on ourselves. At least we should keep on with the education to the public. At least with education, what we stand to achieve if we wear our masks and wear them properly. Not just wear, but wear them properly. And also adhere.
Fortunately, some of us, those of us in the media, we've interacted with people, and you can see an adult. So you ask the question, who would design a face mask? And when they sell when you buy the face mask, where would the money go to? selling of masks. The only thing is that don't fall, because when you fall ill, at this time that the government is treating, I say, please, just wear your mask. This one too should be a debate. And how long can we be debating? Man that we all had loved. You yourself, you would think that no, let us look at the safety protocols and make sure that we abide by them. I attempt to say something, but then I hesitate, because if you are not very careful, you would introduce somebody who is not. It's always unique to have the military semblance of such a situation, because look at the road, it is orderly. You don't see anybody standing anywhere, standing agile anywhere. You would see it's a casket, and you see, if it has to be in our traditional settings, in my village, that we are doing this funeral, and you have a casket and flowers like this. But this time the whole town is there, and you will even get space. So social distancing and everything will be thrown to dogs. But because of the military settings around it, now you see the order and you see the discipline, and we see that this is the way it has to go.
We need to commend the planning committee for having put in up such an orderly ceremony or event.
And it is hard work.
Yes. If they hadn't come out to put in those measures, I think by this time the forecourt of the conference center should be filled up. Yes, should be filled up. Kudos to the planning committee for having done a good job. And as we are seeing, I'm sure our former president will rest well.
Will rest well.
Filled with smiles.
If really dead people will stand there, they said that he is standing somewhere looking at and watching us. If he should be standing there, he would see that, well, what he stood for has come to stay. Because the discipline that he really encouraged all of us to do, I think we see semblance of it at his funeral. In the civil rule, when we say funeral procession, that is. But then, when we say funeral procession, with full military honors, what does it entail? What is it?
Well, first of all, the formal name for the funeral procession is a cortege, and that works in every other setting, whether military or civilian. So it's the formal name. Former president is moved from here to the Independence Square on Wednesday. We'll see. This is quite a unique formation that has been set up for this instance. So first of all, his procession will be preceded by the quad bikes, and now coming next in the procession will be the cavalry or the escort horses. These are soldiers on horses drawn from the 3 mounted squadron of the 153 Armored Reconnaissance Unit. So these mounted or cavalry or escort horses will be serving as ceremonial guards for the procession. And being a lifelong rider himself, you will see that there will be a riderless horse in the procession. Now this riderless horse is symbolic of his love for riding. So in this case, it is thought that the horse is his. So then you see that the riderless horse will be saddled and prepared for riding, but then the riding boots will be turned to face backwards. And then the riding crop, the riding helmet, and his jacket will also be placed in the saddle of the horse. Now the horse will not be alone, it will be guided by a handler, but then no one will be riding the horse.
So no one will sit on the horse.
Yes.
So the person will be there holding maybe the strap and then walking.
Yes. So he was an equestrian, he was a riding enthusiast. So this is symbolic of him to celebrate that love for riding. Yes. Now after that we'll have the escorts and then the firing party. They will be doing the ceremonial 21-gun salute at the cemetery. Yes. Then the band will also be escorting the casket as it moves from here and throughout the procession on the final day to the cemetery as well. We'll also have the clergy in the procession and then followed by the body on the gun carriage. When it leaves here initially, it will be placed in the hearse to the Independence Square. But in the final day on the procession, it will be placed on the gun carriage, which will be attached to a vehicle. Now, the gun carriage is an honor. When your body is placed on a gun carriage, is an honor reserved for generals and heads of state. Yes. So on the gun carriage, as someone might be wondering what a gun carriage is a frame or a mount that supports the gun barrel of an artillery piece, allowing it to be maneuvered and fired. Now, when we say a gun, in layman terms, everyone thinks a gun is a pistol, a small gun that you fire. But in military terms, the gun is a high or large caliber weapon. So it's placed, and when those are the cannons, they sound like the cannons. They make the very, very loud noises and shake the ground at certain points in time. So these are handled by the officers and soldiers of the artillery unit. Yes. And then they will also be firing at the cemetery as well. So now gun carriages have been used to carry the coffin of fallen soldiers and officers at military funerals, and also holders of high office with a military connection in state funerals to their final resting place. And the practice has its origins in war and appears in the 19th century in the Queen's Regulations of the British Army. Seeing as we were colonized by the British, that practice has also been inculcated here. Yes. So then we'll also have the pallbearers. Now here, the pallbearers provide security to the deceased or the fallen comrade. So in the case where the body is placed on the gun carriage, the bearer party will be flanked. The bearer party flanks the pallbearers, meaning the pallbearers will come next to the gun carriage, and then the bearer party will flank them on the outside. But where the casket is in the hearse, the pallbearers will also flank the hearse, and then the bearer party will be outside. But in the situ as they carry the caskets to provide that ceremonial respect and then security as well. Now in this case, the pallbearers will be brigadier generals. Yes. Considering his rank and his position in society as a statesman, the pallbearers who will be doing the ceremonial duty for him are almost very senior officers.
Senior officers.
Yes. Brigadier generals and same rank within the other arms of service. Yes. After that, we'll see that. So this is the procession that will be going along the streets, but when we get to the cemetery, other players will be added. So we'll see the insignia bearers, the chief mourners, the presidential's representative, mourners in uniform, and then mourners not in uniform. And we also have the rear detachment and then vehicles. When we get to the cemetery, we'll see that to give the utmost respect to the fallen comrade.
We're still at the Accra International Conference Center and at the funeral of former President Jerry John Rawlings. Born 1947 and died 2020 at age 73. Viewers, we're still at the Accra International Conference Center where the funeral of the late President Jerry John Rawlings is ongoing. This morning, the casket carrying his mortal remains was delivered to the family, and the casket was brought in this morning by officers of the Ghana Army, of the military, and Captain Akaku. The officers, who are those who brought in the officers brought the casket and delivered it to the family? Adon.
Okay, as I said earlier, we call them the burial party, and I said they were commanded by squadron leader Ejeni Mwati, and they are made up of warrant officers. I think we have warrant officer class 1, Emisa Foster, warrant officer class 1, Yali Douglas, warrant officer class 2, Numawose Wisdom, warrant officer class 2, Na Godwin. We have warrant officer class 1, Awafu Daniel, and warrant officer class 2, Brefo Sechi Daniel, warrant officer class 1, Kwashi David, and then warrant officer class 1, Ahiale Stanley Innocent. They constitute the burial party. And when we move on to the Independence Square, where the funeral will also, the proper funeral will take place, and to the cemetery, we have other colleagues and other members who also constitute other unique groups. We have the wreath bearers, those smartly turned out ladies who would carry the wreath to be laid. We have the guns, the 21 gun salute. We have a commander in charge of them. You know, with the military, we don't just do things in isolation. You are guided by leaders so that when things go wrong, they would answer, and when things go right too, they would answer. Yeah. So for the gun salute, the 21 gun salute, I think the commander is in the person of Captain Abdul Mubarak Yakubu from the 66th Artillery Regiment. And then the wreath, the gun carriage, as my colleague T said, the gun carriage, the vehicle that would be linked to the gun carriage, there is also a commander who is in the person of Lieutenant Jones Amwako, and he will be assisted by the battery sergeant major in the person of W1 Mate George. So as and when the developments come, whoever we recognize would let our viewers know what actually is taking place and who is in command and who are those doing exactly what they are doing.
final journey of such a great man, you have to know that 8 a.m. starts, you get closer, you get to your TV, sit down, and then as the activities you also say a word of prayer for the former president.
you.